The cabin was filled with the soft hum of passengers settling in, the usual mix of chatter, laughter, and the rustle of carry-on bags. Everything seemed normal until one man's angry voice cut through the air like a blade. "Get off this plane," he shouted, his words laced with arrogance and entitlement. Heads turned. A young woman, calm and collected, stood frozen in the aisle, unsure whether to respond or stay silent. No one knew what had sparked the outburst, but the tension was instant. The crew hesitated, unsure how to handle the situation as the other passengers exchanged uneasy glances. The man, dressed in a sharp suit, looked certain he had the power to make her leave. But what he didn't know was who she really was, or how the next few minutes would change his life forever. The woman took a deep breath, her composure unshaken. Her quiet strength filled the silence that followed his cruel demand. And when she finally spoke, her voice was steady, clear, and full of purpose. Those 6 words she said next would not only silence the man but expose something much bigger than anyone on that flight expected. Within moments, phones were recording, whispers spread, and the balance of power shifted in the most unexpected way. What started as a public humiliation for one passenger was about to turn into a lesson that the entire internet would soon be talking about. As the cabin fell into uneasy silence, the flight attendants tried to defuse the situation, their polite smiles masking the tension beneath. The young woman, her name was Maya, slowly took her seat, her hands trembling slightly though her face stayed calm. Across the aisle, the man glared at her, still fuming. No one knew what had triggered his outburst, but whispers began to spread through the rows. Some passengers quietly recorded the moment, sensing that something about this encounter wasn't ordinary. Maya kept her eyes forward, replaying the man's words in her mind. It wasn't the first time she'd faced that kind of behavior, but it still stung. What he didn't know was that Maya wasn't just another traveler heading to a meeting. She was on her way to represent a major tech company at an international conference. The same company, in fact, that had just entered into a major partnership with the airline they were flying on. The irony of it all wasn't lost on her. She knew who she was, even if he didn't. But rather than react, she chose patience. Still, the passengers could feel the energy shift. The man's confidence began to crack as he noticed people recording him, the murmurs growing louder. The flight crew exchanged glances, unsure whether to step in or wait for instructions. Everyone could sense that something big was about to happen, but no one, not even Maya, could have predicted just how far the truth would reach once those 6 words came out. The tension inside the plane grew heavier with each passing minute. The captain hadn't even announced takeoff yet, and already, the passengers were divided. Some sided quietly with Maya, whispering words of support, while others kept their eyes down, afraid to get involved. The man, whose name the attendants later confirmed as Richard, kept pacing in the aisle, muttering under his breath about people not knowing their place. His arrogance filled the cabin, but so did an undercurrent of curiosity. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Maya sat quietly, pretending to check her phone, but her mind was racing. She had worked for years to earn her position, senior executive representing her company's new global initiative on diversity and innovation. This trip was supposed to mark a milestone in her career. Instead, she found herself the target of a man who thought he could intimidate her into silence. From the galley, one of the flight attendants, a woman named Carla, watched closely. She recognized Maya. She had seen her name on the VIP manifest earlier, but airline protocol demanded neutrality, and that made things even more complicated. Meanwhile, a passenger in the back, a travel vlogger named Ethan, quietly filmed the entire exchange. Unsure if he should intervene or just document what was unfolding, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Every glance, every whispered comment, added another layer to the growing storm. And just when it seemed things might calm down, Richard opened his mouth again, this time, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. Richard's voice thundered through the cabin again, drawing everyone's attention. "I said she doesn't belong here," he shouted, pointing at Maya as if he owned the plane. The room froze. Even the hum of the engines seemed to fade. Passengers turned in disbelief, and the murmurs that had filled the air moments earlier fell into complete silence. Maya looked up slowly, her calm gaze locking with his. There was no fear in her eyes, this time only quiet strength. A flight attendant hurried toward Richard, asking him to lower his voice, but he brushed her off with a wave. "You people don't understand," he snapped. "Some of us have earned our seats here." His words hung heavy, laced with entitlement and pride. The other passengers shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to speak up or stay silent. Ethan's camera was still recording, capturing every second of the escalating scene. Maya took a slow breath. She had dealt with difficult people before, but never in front of 100 strangers with cameras rolling. Her thoughts raced. Should she respond now or wait? Carla, the flight attendant, exchanged a worried look with the captain through the open cockpit door. They both knew this couldn't go on much longer without serious consequences. Richard leaned closer, his tone turning sharper, his voice echoing across the cabin. Every passenger's eyes were on Maya now, waiting for her reaction. She finally stood up, her expression calm but firm, and the plane seemed to hold its breath. Then she spoke the 6 words that would change everything. The cabin went completely still as Maya's words echoed through the air. At first, no one moved. Even Richard froze, the anger on his face giving way to confusion. The passengers looked from one to the other, sensing something had just shifted but not quite understanding what. Then, slowly, Maya reached into her bag and pulled out her identification card. The airline's logo gleamed under the overhead lights. Gasps rippled through the rows as people leaned forward to get a closer look. Richard's face paled. The 6 words she had spoken, "You just insulted your company's partner," hit him harder than any argument could. The room erupted in quiet whispers. Some passengers covered their mouths in disbelief. Others started recording again. The flight attendants exchanged quick glances. Even Carla, who had been calm all along, seemed momentarily stunned, but just when everyone thought the situation couldn't escalate further, the captain stepped out of the cockpit. He had received a message from Headquarters 1 that changed everything. He approached Maya with a respectful nod before turning to Richard. "Sir," he said firmly, "we need to have a word." The tension in the air thickened. Richard tried to protest, but before he could, the captain gestured toward a man standing quietly near the front, a corporate representative who had been on the same flight. Unrecognized until now, he had witnessed everything. His next words would determine what happened next, not just for Richard, but for everyone watching this unbelievable scene unfold. The cabin was silent as the corporate representative stepped forward. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp, taking in every detail of the tense moment. "Mr. Richards," he said evenly, "I think it's time you take a seat. Or rather, leave this flight." The man's voice carried quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to be raised to be respected. Richard blinked, completely thrown off. "Excuse me?" he stammered, glancing around as if expecting support. But the passengers who had once watched in silence were now clearly against him. The representative turned to Maya, offering a polite nod. "Miss Carter," he said, "I didn't expect to meet you like this. We've heard a lot about your work with the new partnership. Thank you for handling this situation with grace." A soft murmur of approval spread through the cabin as realization dawned. Maya wasn't just any passenger. She was one of the lead executives behind the airline's global diversity program. Richard's confidence collapsed. He tried to argue, but the captain gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, please gather your things," he said. "You won't be continuing on this flight." The crowd erupted into quiet applause as Richard, red-faced and speechless, was escorted off the plane. Just as the tension began to fade, Maya's phone buzzed. It was a message from the company's board. The incident had gone viral. And Richard wasn't just a passenger, he was a regional manager for one of their own partner divisions. The irony hit hard. His career wasn't just ending, it had ended the moment he yelled those words. That as the plane finally took off, a calm sense of relief filled the cabin. The earlier tension had vanished, replaced by quiet conversations and knowing smiles. Maya leaned back in her seat, staring out the window as the city lights faded beneath the clouds. For the first time since boarding, she could breathe freely. The ordeal had been uncomfortable, but it also revealed something powerful: how truth, patience, and composure could speak louder than anger ever could. Carla stopped by her seat and whispered softly, "You handled that better than anyone I've ever seen." Maya smiled, grateful but humble. "Sometimes," she replied, "you don't have to shout to be heard." The passengers nearby nodded, their earlier silence now replaced with quiet admiration. Even Ethan, the vlogger who had filmed the incident, approached her after landing to thank her for showing what real strength looked like. That by the time they reached their destination, the story had already begun spreading online. Headlines talked about the businesswoman who stood her ground, and millions praised the calm way she handled disrespect. Richard's company issued a statement the next day, confirming his removal and acknowledging the need for better training and accountability. Maya didn't gloat. Instead, she focused on her work and the message behind it, that respect isn't given by status or seat class, but by character. Her quiet courage became an example for many, proving that sometimes 6 simple words can end injustice and begin change all at once.